just a few last questions remaining. One advice for community pharmacists as we prepare for the future.
Well, I think that we need to be curious. We need to be interested in our future. We have seen many fast changes during the last years, and we have also seen how health systems had to cope with the new challenges linked to COVID-19. But still, there are many other challenges for our healthcare systems as well that pharmacists and pharmacies can help to solve. I think that we actually have to look into our digital offerings and ways of serving our communities remotely. And as such, I think that we have to, as pharmacists, start to use our pharmacokinetics, pharmacogenomics, and pharmacodynamics background and put it into use, benefiting our patients and our societies. This is our real value proposition, our knowledge, our competence as pharmacists. And pharmacists assist in the management of chronic conditions through comprehensive medication management services in community pharmacies. So we need to collaborate, we need to advocate, we need to join forces with our patient organizations, and we have to be bold, and then we will succeed.
I agree 100% on that, Lars. And one advice for community pharmacy owners, as they prepare for the future, you have touched briefly, but just to kind of conclude it.
Yes, I think that we need to be open for the digital development. We need to adapt to the digital world. We need to focus, I think, on 4 key areas: prevention, discovery of diseases via different kinds of testing, support patients with minor ailments, and focus on patient safety and the non-communicable diseases. And we need to collaborate with the patient. These 4 areas cover most of everything we do, but we need to link it also to the digital development, because digital technologies will shape the future of global health. And in the future, there will not be any traditional health or digital health. It will just be health, digitally enabled. And as such, we need to embrace also the digital technologies.
I agree 100%. And I guess while we're talking of digital technologies, we cannot forget our current generation that we're preparing in terms of, entering the profession. What is one advice for the current pharmacy students and new graduates who are about to enter a profession?
Well, actually, I think that we need to try to convince our universities and academic institutions to actually faster integrate these new kinds of areas into the education, because pharmacists need to be prepared when they leave the universities to this new digital healthcare system. And as such, also we need to focus more on collaboration with other healthcare professionals, because we can't work anymore in silos. We need to work together. So perhaps join forces already at the university and start to work together.
I agree. And I guess just to wrap this up, how do you describe the future of pharmacy in the next 5 years?
Well, I'm reminded of another story. Happens to be about Amazon, but was one of the keynotes that I was referencing earlier. That I'm not even sure I told the story because we got off to another great area as we were chatting. But it's about this farm equipment company in northern Manitoba. I've told the story a few times, but I think it's worth telling again. So it was family owned for generations, and they would deliver heavy equipment to tractors and things that were mission critical. Because if your tractor is down for more than 5 days, that means your whole business is paralyzed. So a small business, and it was largely based on reputation, relationships, and the family's connections. But if Amazon can disrupt that business, they'll disrupt anything. So, what they did was they came in with a service that paired it with like an Uber mechanic. So not only did they deliver the part in less than 48 hours, and that was whether it was a business day or weekend, they could pair it with the mechanic to fix the tractor. So your downtime was 2 to 3 days versus sometimes 7 to 10 days. So if you think about the ROI, but they're targeting businesses like that. no business is immune to disruption. And it doesn't have to be just Amazon. There's tons of disruptors out there, innovative ways of delivering services. So when someone asks me what the future of pharmacy is, well, you don't want it to be that tractor company. You don't want it to be that Blockbuster Video. You want to make sure that you're making investments to deliver the care that people want, because it's going to be empowering the patient. So access to virtual care, having more automation and choice. So yes, bricks and mortar will always be there. Pharmacies will be accessible, and that healthcare advice, whether it's delivered virtually or in store, will always be a central part. But you can deliver it in many different ways. And we see that with the Maple app and other virtual tools, MedMe, MedAssist, that offer that technology to enable it. But all of this, regardless of the technology platform you use, what we need to make sure is we preserve that relationship and the access between a healthcare provider like a pharmacist and a patient, because everything will revolve around there. And I've seen different stores, even in the US, where they've created a wellness center and the whole pharmacy is in the middle of the store, not at the back or side. There's no counter, right? Like literally everything is delivered to the person, but the person and the healthcare provider are met at the beginning. And the intake is very different. So, I think that's one model. There are many models of care, and not always being tied to the bricks and mortar, I think will give us even more value and access to doing so many different things. Let's unlock the value of the expertise, support it through the profession. And I think that ultimately is going to drive whatever future technology exists. We know that people are using their phones more, and we have to catch up to that service delivery without compromising the quality of the outcome. And I think that's going to be really the key. So even, one last thing on that, because it's a great point about open to change. When I first went out talking about asymptomatic testing for COVID, yes, there was quite a bit of opposition. There was, like you would see in an adoption curve, there was about 10% really early adopters and innovators, and then the curve goes as people become more accepting of and comfortable with the protocols in place. But now, in the last call for participants for the unvaccinated teachers to go into pharmacies for testing in Ontario, we have over 1,200 pharmacies putting their hand up, and it's growing because people are more comfortable with the health and safety measures they put in their stores, whether it's the barriers, the PPE, following IPAC protocols. And they know that, by doing vaccinations and even asymptomatic testing that's been in place, you are at some risk. So we're looking at everything from symptomatic to asymptomatic testing, rapid antigen to PCR, mobile on site to curbside to drop off to in-store. So we've got that area covered, and we'll continue, I think, to see more and more pharmacies put their hand up. And that's because progress at the beginning is tough. Doing things outside your comfort zone is not easy. And there's often if you listen to a lot of the podcasts about leadership and, what are the traits of good leaders? Well, making people uncomfortable with an idea because it's outside their comfort zone is probably the hallmark of this a good idea, right? Because that's challenging status quo and it's preparing you for the future. And nothing is immune to threats and risks, but certainly I think we've demonstrated that it can work even when there's some initial opposition. And there will always be a cohort of people that will say, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm comfortable doing what I'm doing. And as long as it's voluntary, as long as there's an option, then I think we should forge ahead. Otherwise, we will be left behind, and we don't want that.
I agree. And I recall the times as we were quite divisive in terms of, the views we held as a profession. So great story. And that's a perfect way of actually ending this segment, because I think it really is, the moral is, let's be open to change, let's be innovative, and let's challenge some of our barriers just so that we can break them and forge the way ahead. Thank you so much, Justin, for your time and those valuable insights, because I learned quite a lot from this conversation, and I hope that I'm sure the listeners will also learn. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to highlight that you also have a podcast running titled Pharmacist Matter. So please be sure to check that out. We'll link it below, and so that you would have that. And I'm sure Justin, just the way he has shared some valuable insights here, we'll learn a lot more through that as well. So you have one new follower in me there, Justin.
Well, it's all about being together and supporting
Yes.
each other. And, I think it's great what you're doing, and look forward to your future podcasts as well.
Thank you very much. Well, with that, I'm just going to wrap this up, and thank you again for your time, and we'll see you next time. Can they prepare for the rather dynamic and fluid future of our profession with this pandemic and post-pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like I said earlier, stay involved with your local, like here in Arizona, we have state associations. We have the federal association, APHA. There's a lot of what we call like section interest groups. So these are groups of either like practices that are the same, or maybe advocacy issues or things that people want to pursue. Like one of the examples that I love, a couple of the groups are Care for the Underserved and the population health, public health group. Right. So you start getting into those groups, you start networking with people that want to collaborate and do projects that are probably of interest to you. And so that helps to feed and to like connect you so that you don't feel isolated and frustrated and burnt out, because it's easy, especially with all the things on your plate, to get burnt out. So by having these outlets and finding a like-minded community of people that can help support you, your experience is going to be so much better than feeling like you're alone. And so that's one thing I always tell people: it is worth the investment. It's worth the investment for you. It brings you, continuing education. It brings you opportunities for leadership, even traveling to a conference once in a while to go and meet people and talk about what they're doing. That opens up a totally different dynamic rather than you staying at home and being frustrated.
I guess as we are wrapping this conversation up, how do you describe the future of pharmacy in the next 5 to 10 years? And, what do you see? What are some changes that you are anticipating or envisioning?
Well, there are a bit of an uncertainty as to what the technology giants such as Amazon will do in the world of pharmacy. There is a risk if pharmacists do not get together and imagine what this transformation could look like. There is a risk that from a technology standpoint, from a data analytics standpoint, from a user friendliness standpoint, a huge part of the market will disappear from what we know today as being the traditional pharmacy. And so it's possible to combat it, but the only way to combat the technology giants is to use technology wisely. If you don't do this, for sure, you are going to see your business model being eroded to a great extent, because the youth, the new generation, the people who are born, raised, and who live with mobile devices and very sophisticated technology will not accept that they know more than who is supposed to be their coach. If I go to a pharmacy today as a woman and I ask my pharmacist about Clue or Natural Cycles, and my pharmacist doesn't know about these two mobile apps that I, as a woman, have been using for the last year because I don't want to be on an oral contraceptive, the first reaction this person will have is that my pharmacist is outdated.
Yes.
And so if we are not in front of the parade, we're going to be watching it, and it's going to be painful.
Oh my gosh, yes. And you couldn't have summed that up any better than that.